When we think of pirates, images of daring escapades and swashbuckling heroes often spring to mind. We see them as figures of romance and adventure, sailing the high seas in search of fortune and glory. We imagine them as wild adventurers, free from the constraints of society, living life on their own terms. Singing shanties and chasing treasure across the vast oceans, their lives filled with excitement and untold riches. The allure of the pirate life has been romanticized in countless stories and films, painting a picture of freedom and adventure. But the truth? The reality of being a pirate was far removed from the romanticized image we often see. Most new recruits weren't seeking adventure. They were often desperate men, down on their luck or forced into piracy by circumstance. Many were begging, not for gold or glory, but to get off the ship, to escape the harsh realities of life at sea. The dream of piracy quickly turned into a nightmare for many, within days. The romantic facade crumbled almost immediately upon experiencing the brutal realities of pirate life. The first shock, the initial disillusionment, wasn't a sword fight, or a daring raid, or any of the exciting things they might have imagined. It was the stench, the overwhelming, inescapable odor that permeated every corner of the ship. Unwashed bodies, crammed together in the close confines of the ship, contributed to the overpowering smell. Rotting food infested with maggots and weevils added another layer to the unpleasant aroma. And sickness everywhere, the constant presence of disease and decay, created an atmosphere of misery and despair. Seasickness hit hard, especially for those new to sailing. You'd be vomiting over the rail, day after day, your body racked with nausea and exhaustion. While the veterans laughed, hardened by their own experiences, offering no sympathy for your suffering, they saw it as a rite of passage, a necessary ordeal to be endured. The crew, not charming rogues, not the dashing heroes of legend, but desperate, violent men driven by greed, anger, and a thirst for survival, who trusted no one, constantly looking over their shoulders, fearing betrayal and violence. Camaraderie was a myth, a romantic notion that quickly evaporated in the face of harsh reality. Paranoia ruled, suspicion and mistrust were the order of the day, and a wrong word, a perceived slight, or a moment of weakness could get you stabbed or worse, thrown overboard to a watery grave. As the lowest rank, the newest member of the crew, you got the worst jobs, the most back-breaking, unpleasant tasks imaginable. The worst food, often consisting of moldy bread, rancid meat, and water that tasted of wood and decay. And constant bullying, the relentless torment and abuse from the more experienced, hardened members of the crew. Your dreams of heroism, of adventure and glory, the very reasons you might have joined in the first place, died fast, crushed under the weight of the brutal reality, replaced by the need, the desperate primal urge, to survive another hour, to make it through another day in this floating hell. Freedom? It was a cage, a prison on the open sea. You couldn't leave, there was no escape from this floating prison. Hundreds of miles from shore, surrounded by nothing but endless ocean. Surrounded by men, hardened criminals, and desperate souls, who might kill you for a share of loot, for a perceived insult, or for no reason at all. The captain was a tyrant, ruling with an iron fist, his word law. The crew your potential executioners, ready to carry out his every command, eager to prove their loyalty. Every new pirate, every fresh recruit, faced a moment of truth, a stark realization of the reality they had entered, realizing they'd made, perhaps, the biggest mistake of their lives, a catastrophic mistake, one that would haunt them for the rest of their days, however long or short they might be. Lying in a filthy hammock, crammed into the dark, damp confines below deck, listening to the ship groan, creaking and straining against the relentless waves, and the crew brawl, the constant fighting and drunken revelry that filled the nights with noise and violence. You'd think, what have I done? What have I gotten myself into? The pirate's life wasn't adventure, it wasn't freedom, it wasn't glory, it was survival. A constant struggle against the elements, against disease and against each other. In a floating hell, a world of misery and despair. The only thing you'd be searching for, the only thing that mattered, was a way out, a chance to escape this nightmare. The sea didn't offer freedom, it offered imprisonment, it offered misery, hardship, and the constant threat of death. And you'd be counting the days, each one a small victory against the odds, until you saw land again, until you could finally escape this floating hell and return to some semblance of a normal life. The real story of piracy, the unvarnished truth, starts with regret and ends with a desperate longing for dry land. Hollywood gave us Captain Jack Sparrow, witty, charming, always landing on his feet. But real pirates? They were nothing like that. Forget stylish coats and gleaming smiles. Pirates were filthy, scarred, and often toothless. Their clothes were rags, their bodies covered in sores and crude tattoos. The Band of Brothers idea? Pure fiction. Crews were alliances of convenience ruled by suspicion and greed. Mutiny was always a threat, loyalty was for sale. Sword fights weren't elegant duels. They were brutal, chaotic, and over in seconds. Pirates relied on terror, not heroics, to win. The real pirate was a predator, not a romantic rebel. Hollywood's pirate is a fantasy. The truth is far darker. The real pirate world was ugly, violent, and short-lived. Life aboard a pirate ship was a volatile mix, a dangerous dance between freedom and brutality. Pirate ships were powder kegs of violence, constantly threatening to explode. Imagine the close quarters, the desperate characters, the ever-present lure of treasure, and the constant threat of naval pursuit. This chaotic existence was held together by a ruthless code, a set of rules as unforgiving as the sea itself. These weren't mere suggestions, they were the bedrock of pirate society, the only thing standing between order and utter anarchy. This code was formalized in the Articles of Agreement, a document that every pirate knew intimately. Every man, upon joining the crew, signed or marked his name, often with an X sealed in blood, signifying their commitment to this brutal way of life. This act wasn't just a formality, it was a binding contract, a pledge of allegiance to the pirate code. They did so knowing the rules were enforced, not with courts or appeals, but with swift and often merciless justice. The consequences for breaking these rules were severe, with brutal punishments designed to deter even the slightest infraction. The quartermaster, not the captain, held significant power in this system. He kept order, a vital role in maintaining the delicate balance on a ship full of hardened criminals. He was judge, jury, and executioner, dispensing justice with an iron fist. His word was law, and his decisions were final. Steal from a crewmate, a seemingly small offense in a world of plunder, but the quartermaster decided your fate, and that fate was rarely kind. More often than not, it involved a public, humiliating punishment, a spectacle designed to remind everyone of the cost of disobedience. Flogging was common, a brutal reminder of the quartermaster's authority. But for serious crimes, those that threatened the very fabric of the pirate community, punishments escalated far beyond a simple lashing. There was keel hauling, a terrifying ordeal where a pirate was dragged beneath the ship. Maiming, the loss of a limb as a permanent reminder of one's transgression. Or the ultimate penalty, death. Desertion, abandoning your comrades in the heat of battle or stealing treasure, betraying the shared spoils of piracy, meant swift execution, a brutal end to a life already lived on the edge, or being tossed overboard, left to the mercy of the unforgiving sea. The code wasn't about justice, it wasn't about fairness or morality, it was about survival, pure and simple. Discipline was harsh, unyielding, designed to terrify and control, to keep a motley crew of cutthroats and outcasts in line. One misstep, one moment of weakness could end your life in an instant. Signing on meant surrendering your individual rights to a system where mercy was rare, and the only guarantee was the constant threat of violence. The pirate code was written in blood, a testament to the brutal reality of pirate life. It was etched in the very fabric of their existence, not with ink, but with the sacrifices and suffering of those who dared to live outside the law. It kept the chaos, the inherent lawlessness of a pirate crew, barely in check, always threatening to erupt into full-blown mutiny. On a pirate ship, a floating world unto itself, order was enforced by fear, the ever-present threat of violence, and the unwavering authority of the quartermaster. Life aboard a pirate ship was fraught with peril, but the most insidious threat wasn't always visible. The deadliest enemy, on a pirate ship, lurked not in the clash of steel or the roar of cannons, but in the unseen corners of the vessel. It wasn't a cannonball that posed the greatest risk to a pirate's life. While battles were certainly dangerous, a far more silent and relentless killer stalked the decks. It was disease, a constant companion, an unwelcome guest that could decimate a crew faster than any broadside. Crammed below deck, often in conditions that defied description, hundreds of men lived, slept, and ate in close proximity. With no sanitation, hygiene was a forgotten luxury. Waste accumulated, attracting vermin and fostering a breeding ground for illness. Sickness spread rapidly through the confined spaces, jumping from man to man with terrifying ease, like wildfire. One cough could ignite an epidemic, turning the ship into a floating plague vessel. Dysentery, with its agonizing grip on the bowels, was a common scourge. The bloody flux, as it was grimly known, brought dehydration and weakness, leaving men vulnerable to other ailments. Could wipe out a significant portion of a crew in days, leaving the remaining pirates weakened and demoralized, easy prey for both the elements and their enemies. Scurvy was another ever-present threat, a debilitating condition caused by a lack of vitamin C, a slow death that gnawed at the body, weakening it from the inside out. Black gums, a horrifying sign of the disease's progression, were just the beginning. Falling teeth made eating difficult, further weakening the afflicted. Old wounds reopening. Even injuries long healed would suddenly burst open, a gruesome reminder of the body's inability to repair itself. Fresh food was the only preventative measure, but it was a precious commodity. Vanished quickly, consumed within days of leaving port, leaving the crew to rely on less nutritious fare, leaving only the barest of rations to sustain them on long voyages. Hardtack, a rock-hard biscuit often infested with weevils, became a staple. And salt meat. Preserved in brine, it provided some sustenance, but lacked essential vitamins, and often tasted rancid. Respiratory illnesses such as pneumonia and tuberculosis found fertile ground in the ship's damp environment, thrived in the close quarters, spreading rapidly through coughs and sneezes. The damp, crowded quarters, where ventilation was poor and sunlight rarely penetrated, creating ideal conditions for bacteria and viruses to flourish. Rats, lice, and other vermin were constant companions, carrying their own deadly cargo of disease. And fleas spread diseases with every bite, adding to the misery. Brought typhus, a brutal illness characterized by fever, rash, and delirium, and other plagues. The threat of widespread pestilence was a constant specter, haunting every voyage. A simple cut that would be a minor inconvenience on land could turn deadly in the unsanitary conditions of a ship. Infection was rampant and treatment was often crude and ineffective. Gangrene meant the rapid decay of tissue, a horrifying and agonizing condition. Amputation, often the only way to stop the spread of the disease, was a brutal necessity. No anesthetic. The unfortunate victim would be held down while the ship's surgeon, often with limited experience, sawed through bone and muscle. The constant sound of the ship creaking and groaning was punctuated by of coughing, a symphony of suffering that echoed through the ship's timbers, and groaning, a constant reminder of the ever-present threat of disease, haunted every night. The darkness amplified the fear, turning every cough and moan into a harbinger of doom. No doctors trained in the latest medical techniques. No medicine to combat the myriad of illnesses that plagued the crew. Just folk remedies passed down through generations, often with little or no scientific basis. And rum, used as both a painkiller and a disinfectant, though its effectiveness was questionable at best. The ship was often less a vessel of adventure and more a floating infirmary, a breeding ground for disease and suffering, not an adventure. The romanticized image of pirate life often clashes harshly with the grim reality of sickness and death. Disease killed relentlessly, indiscriminately. More pirates than any cutlass or pistol, than any battle. The true enemy wasn't always the navy or rival pirates, but the invisible killers lurking within their own ranks. Survival was a constant gamble, a desperate fight against overwhelming odds, A daily struggle not just against the elements and enemy ships but against the very air they breathed, against invisible enemies, the microscopic organisms that held the power of life and death over every pirate on board. Pirate food was legendary for all the wrong reasons. Hardtack biscuits infested with bugs were the daily bread. Salted meat was so tough and salty it was barely edible. Fresh food disappeared in days. After that it was endless hardtack and salt junk. Water stored in barrels turned foul, slimy and green. Grog, rum mixed with water, wasn't for fun, but to mask the taste and kill bacteria. Contaminated water brought dysentery and death. Every meal was a battle against your own gag reflex. Hunger and thirst wore down even the toughest pirates. The real hardship wasn't lack of treasure, it was choking down another meal. Pirate life was endless, back-breaking labor. No days off, just constant work to keep the ship afloat. Sails and rigging needed constant adjustment, even in storms. Climbing high above the deck, one slip meant death. Pumping out the bilge, foul water mixed with waste, was a hated, vital chore. Decks had to be scrubbed, ropes checked, hull scraped, sails mended, weapons cleaned. Any slacking was punished harshly. The romantic image of pirates lounging on deck, pure myth. Within days your body ached, your hands bled and your spirit broke. The work never stopped. The sea demanded constant effort. Pirate life was hard labor, not freedom. The only escape was exhaustion. The most feared pirate punishment? Marooning. Offenders were left alone on a barren island with a pistol and a single shot. The pistol wasn't for hunting. It was for ending your own misery. The ship sailed away, leaving you to die slowly from thirst, starvation, or madness. The silence and isolation broke men long before hunger did. Marooning stripped you of everything: crew, identity, hope. It was a ghost story come to life, a warning to all. Betrayal meant a slow, lonely death. The ultimate deterrent was utter abandonment. Even if you survived disease, hunger, and violence, piracy was a short-lived career. Most pirates lasted only a few years, if that. The navies of the world hunted pirates relentlessly. Naval warships outgunned and outmatched pirate vessels. Battles were desperate and bloody, usually ending in capture or death. Captured pirates faced swift trials and public hangings. Bodies were left to rot in cages as warnings. Famous pirates died in squalor, not glory. The dream of treasure and freedom ended on the gallows. Piracy was a dead end, not a legend. After a week on a pirate ship, you'd be broken, body and mind, seasick, starving, sleep-deprived, and terrified you'd regret ever signing up. Surrounded by violence and disease, you'd live in constant fear. The band of brothers was a paranoid, cutthroat society. The freedom you imagined was a cruel joke. You'd beg for land, for safety, for escape. Treasure and glory would be the last things on your mind. The daily grind, filth, hunger, brutality, would crush you. You wouldn't last a week. The Hollywood fantasy is just that, a fantasy. Real piracy was a brutal struggle for survival. The only treasure was living another day. Most never did.